Good morning and welcome to our Hutt Valley Business Breakfast this morning. This morning we have with us Ross Craig from Fabricare Floorcare, and Ross will be sharing us some information on how to prepare and manage our workspace in light of Covid-19 and going to level 3, which many of us are preparing to do next week. So morning Ross, lovely to see you again.
Great to see you too, Helen, and I hope listeners or viewers or whatever get some value out of what we're going to discuss this morning. As mentioned by Helen, I'm the manager of Fabricare Floorcare and have been for nearly 30 years. Our tagline's working for you since '82. We've been with the Chamber since the time when Brian Jackson was president, which I think was back in the late '80s. I've been the New Zealand representative on the joined Australia New Zealand Standards Development Committees for all matters pertaining to the cleaning industry for more than 20 years. I've also received training in the States, specialist cleaning and restoration, and for mould remediation in 2005, when I realised the magnitude of the problem that New Zealand was facing. It may be of interest that New Zealand still hasn't faced up to that problem by introducing some standards or adopting proven ones from overseas, from other experienced nations. We've also acted as consultants and written protocols on how to rectify problems, etc. If I can just rattle through a few points which may be helpful to you in these troubling times. And if we leave any questions towards the end, or I can respond to you individually by email if you so desire. Those of you who may have visited our website, fabricarefloorcare.co.nz, will have seen that I'm mildly critical of the lack of information our government has provided on cleaning aspects. On checking last night, they have done an update on the 21st of April, but their advice is still very scanty, and there is one item which I believe is totally incorrect, which I'll share with you later in this broadcast. There is some info on our site, and for many that will be totally sufficient. I'm not sure whether you can see, but it's a few pages that one can look through, and that will cover the basics. It will also give you some links into an EPA site. It's the American Environmental Protection Agency, and there you'll find a wealth of information relating to different applications, such as for accommodation providers, businesses, community facilities, retirement communities, healthcare professionals, schools and childcare, and even for vehicles. There's more detailed guidance in areas such as infection control, in sensitive areas such as blood and plasma facilities, dental, assisted living, dialysis, pharmacies, etc. And incidentally, on one of those areas, I saw part of an item on TV last night. It was featuring a dentist bemoaning the lack of information to allow him to get back to work. In the business section, there is an excellent article on conserving and extending respirator supply, which some people are having trouble with sourcing equipment. It outlines the control measures. Some of them are quite simple that you can put in place, and they range through things like, for instance, just as simple as opening windows to allow fresh air in and dampening surfaces to prevent aerolization of the virus. For our purposes today, however, most will be able to look at online at those general categories mentioned before, and they'll find something that relates to their specific situations. So I'll just chat about some basic concepts and cleaning activities in this session, and some things you may want to consider guarding against. Firstly, no matter what we all do, we can only clean to the standard of disinfection at a set point of time. The moment that that process is finished and someone enters an area, it's no longer sterile. However, what you have achieved through having that proper cleaning completed is a reduction in risk by the removal of or destruction of the contaminants. Although it's not technically correct, I'll use the terms dead and alive and customers or staff from now on to make it a wee bit easier in communication. If your premises have been empty for 7 days, then all information I have seen to date says that COVID-19 is no longer alive. On most surfaces, that risk appears to have completely passed after 72 hours. However, scientists, as we all know, are often revisionists. So I'll go with that 7 days from the EPA recommendation. So how are you going to clean? Are you a self-clean in the sense that you do it yourself or utilize your own staff? Do you utilize an outside cleaner? If so, are you comfortable as a PCBU with their level of competence and their knowledge? Do you use specialized contractors for various areas? Some things you may wish to consider in your decision making are: 1, you have no risk because your building has been completely closed for more than 7 days. That is, none of your staff, customers, or outside agencies such as courier and delivery drivers, or those guys who do the security on your building and wander through at night, or maintenance staff have been in the building. Or 2, you have the possibility or probability that you've either had people who have been diagnosed with COVID-19 or carriers, or you have had people in your premises who you have no idea on what their health status is. That 14-day period that we hear so frequently, incidentally, is not set in stone. I'll come back to that later. Depending on if it's a 1 or 2, determine your cleaning and your decontamination approach. That's cool. You could choose number 1 and choose to do nothing. It may be an inexpensive choice. However, you may find that your customers and staff are still a little apprehensive about returning to your premises. Can I suggest that your cost of cleaning prior to their return is an investment? And if you want to give added reassurance, most firms, or in our case, we would offer you a, holding that to the screen, a certificate of decontamination stating what areas have been cleaned and decontaminated within your premises. So you could show that, display it at the entry to your premises, or give it to anyone who has genuine concerns. What we would do in conjunction with yourself is determine what category that you fall in, and then as appropriate, apply a viricide and clean high-touch areas, carpets and furnishings, depending on your requirements. Now, I'm going to return to the most recent guidance document from the Ministry of Health, in it they give an order of cleaning and list every item and area to be cleaned. In item 9, they state vacuum the carpet. Steam cleaning of carpet and rugs is not required. My first question would be, why vacuum at this stage? Most people do not use vacuums with HEPA filters, or they are not top-load machines, and therefore dust is recirculated out of the machine. Ask any professional cleaner or house husband which order they do the cleaning of their home in. And I think you'll find most do dusting after the vacuuming process. Steam cleaning is a misnomer, often used by people with no real industry knowledge. There is a steam cleaning process, and it's seldom used in New Zealand, as evidenced by the relatively few machines that are sold here. Our business actually introduced dry steam cleaning into New Zealand in 1996. It's another story. The process that we and other professional cleaners use in such situations, and that which is recommended by the joint New Zealand-Australian standard, is hot water extraction cleaning. Now, I just put it to you for a moment to think about, why would you clean every other surface in the building except the carpet and rugs? It flies in the face of logic. If a carpet acts as a sink or a containment, it is a filter of contaminants. So what you need to do, I would strongly recommend to you, is you need to clean that filter from time to time. Studies have shown that improved cleaning does reduce the incidence of sickness in a building. Clean the fibre of contaminants and you reduce the incidence. It's not rocket science. If I was to give you the rug from one of the childcare centres that we clean on a regular basis, you'd be surprised at the amount of soiling of all types that you'd discover, whether that be from extraneous matter or from bodily secretions and excretions. And my rant for the day's over on that topic. For many years, we've been a specialist cleaner for 3 of the surgical hospitals in the Greater Wellington region and for many childcare centres. That's covered some very real problems, including mould, norovirus, and MRSA. Covid-19 is not a difficult virus to kill. Any good quality detergent, disinfectant, or quat will do the job. Quat's a quaternary ammonium chloride. We're familiar, as are most reputable cleaning companies, with the use of virucides, fungicides, disinfectants, and the process of high heat cleaning. A lot of cleaners will just use your tap water, which by the time it reaches the surface to be cleaned is relatively cool. We, in our case, choose to invest in equipment where we heat the water with gas and take it way above 80 degrees. 80 degrees is a bit of a magic thing in cleaning in that it's the temperature which most bugs get killed at. I won't bore you with a thing called the Sinner's Circle and Arrhenius's law, but they are the basis of good cleaning practice. So regardless of what action you decide is right for your premises, if you're going to get a clean or decontamination prior to opening, get a reputable business to carry it out, unless you're doing it yourself. Already in both Australia and USA, there are cowboys who have bought spraying or fogging equipment and are selling their services or as decontamination at exorbitant rates or unrealistic service levels. I have little doubt that some wide boys here in New Zealand, opportunists, will try to do the same, just as they did with the scam P-testing that we're all familiar with from just a few short years back. You may ask how you can acquire or assess a reputable business. Here are some suggestions of what you may want to look at. Firstly, are they a member of a professional recognised trade association? The main one in New Zealand is BSCNZ, Building Services Contractors of New Zealand. You can visit their website and the contractors are listed. Do they have business premises showing a street address that you can look at in Google Maps? And do they have a landline where you can actually talk to a person? Are they GST registered and what's their company name? If they ask for cash, run a mile. Be wary of websites. I'll give you just a couple of examples that relate in the local area. One in reality is a computer guy with no experience, no equipment, but he's developed a marketing presence that makes him appear as a substantial firm. He just farms jobs out. Another one lists I think it's 5 top providers. Once again, purely a marketing ploy that clips the ticket and has no real quality control on the firms they choose, as evidenced by the ones that appear on it. So be careful of rankings and ask specific questions of them, or do a check through the company's office or a domain name's website to see who's actually behind it. I'd also encourage you, obviously, as a member of the Chamber, to choose to use a local firm if at all possible. Don't be like the people who use the banks and all the profits go overseas. Get a local company where hopefully the money will circulate back in our economy and be spent within our own business community. The key touch points in any building that you're going to be looking at, and I'd encourage you to do some cleaning on your own account between your regular scheduled cleans, are those things like the taps, the toilet flush handles, the tabletops, the telephones, door handles, desks, etc. You need to step up your cleaning frequencies, and it may well by getting your own staff to do some very basic additional cleaning or sanitizing of those high touch areas. This particularly applies where there are shared facilities, as many of the multi-tenanted buildings will have various or varying cleaning contractors. Believe me when I say that not all cleaning contractors are created equal. This is particularly true where cleaning has been price-driven rather than being quality concerned. We've all now heard about droplet size and transmission through sneezing and coughing. It's not anything new. Back in the 40s and 50s, those of us who are older will recall the common refrain on posters back in schools and waiting rooms saying coughs and sneezes spread diseases. Although it hasn't been widely mentioned, there is now evidence of COVID-19 being non-symptomatic for periods of up to 20 days, and of also being spread through fecal transmission. With the latter, you may want to consider in your building having disposable toilet seat covers. Just ensure that if you do that, provide a receptacle and signage so that people don't try and flush them down the toilet after use. Please also consider positioning sanitizers outside the doors of your toilet facilities. I can tell you in all honesty, based on previous testing that we've carried out, a significant number of people do not wash their hands after using these facilities, disgusting as that may sound, and also that there is no appreciable difference between males and females in that context. By positioning them outside, you'll increase the frequency of use, as it can also be a subtle peer pressure for people, although it may not be too subtle in these days where we're concerned. What you can also use is isopropyl. It's also known as isopropyl alcohol, IPA, or rubbing alcohol. If you can source some, you may only be able to buy a maximum of 5 litres because it is a precursor that's used by the pea industry, for want of a better word. It's a very effective cleaning and sanitizing agent to use on those high touch areas, such as the push plates, the door handles, or whatever. Just mist it on and then leave it to dry or wipe it off. It is a volatile solvent, so it dries relatively quickly. Check though before you use it on computers or phone screens, as some of these won't tolerate solvents and the screen may degrade. If you can't source isopropyl, just as an interim measure, I suggest that you're looking at using whiteboard cleaner, which may be more available. It also contains a volatile solvent, but isopropyl would be my preference. You can also use isopropyl if you're having difficulty in obtaining hand sanitizer still. All you need to do is put it in a trigger spray, top it up with water between 20 and 30%, so that's 70 to 80% isopropyl, add the balance of water, and just mist it over your hands and then rub. One final area that, in my opinion, is often neglected in New Zealand is the heating and air conditioning. When was the last time that your filters were checked? It's particularly important for systems that have ducting. As in New Zealand, to the best of my knowledge, there is no cleaning service available for this. Why do I say this? In the States, for example, this is a very significant industry. And some years ago, I explained the business opportunity to a colleague who looked after a large number of commercial buildings. He had me supply machinery costings, etc., and then went out to the market. And I can tell you there was absolutely zero interest. A few years later, New Zealand introduced the IQP system. I asked one of the chaps I met how they inspected air conditioning systems. His answer was that they just pop out a vent panel and have a look with a torch. So obviously they can't see into ducting for any length, and who's to know what is in there, whether there's molds, whether the guy who built it originally left his lunch when he was doing a bit of welding or whatever. So I ask you again, when was the last time your filters were cleaned or replaced? Yeah, I'm sorry about the length of what I've mentioned. If there's any comments or suggestions, more than happy to take them, or you may wish to address them by email. I think we've been very lucky as a country to have stumbled our way through so far, and I think it's serving as a wake-up call to get some of our systems and procedures into place. I'm aware from a site that I frequently visit for good quality information that a lot of countries, for instance, have temporarily stopped doing immunisation. And so one may see an upsurge in some of those things that we had wiped out or thought we had wiped out, like measles and cholera and typhus and that type of thing. An excellent site that you may want to get quality information from is Undark magazine. It's especially strong in health matters and science matters. So with that, if there are any questions, I'm quite happy to take them.
Thank you very much, Ross. I've just wanted to ask you a couple of things that I'm sure different industries are thinking about. In terms of frequency of cleaning, so I've not heard of a decontamination certificate before, so I can see that that's really useful. But of course, you have to keep your cleaning up, don't you? So what sort of frequency do you see for different types of businesses, like cafes and restaurants, who aren't going to have people on site in level 3, but are, in terms of customers, but they are going to have staff? So what sort of schedules are we thinking about?
I see that as being a real problem area, always has been. Can you think of the last time that you went to a cafe where there was a hand basin for you to wash your hands with?
Yeah, right.
I've only seen one in my time travelling around New Zealand, which I find an interesting observation. I think it's something that we need to tidy up our act in a lot of areas. And as I say, this is a wake-up call for people to consider. Obviously, things like toilets are the biggest concern because they're not well maintained. I don't wish to quote franchises, but you can walk into a certain number of them, go into the restrooms, and they can be in a less than clean state, depending on the previous occupant. So I'd like to think that them and service stations, etc., would ensure that they're cleaned. That may be something where it needs to be done on an hourly basis, checked. And it's obviously going to depend on the number of people going through a building. I had occasion to have to go to the hospital for a checkup the other day, and it was interesting, just the way they had the hand sanitizer placed in a convenient thing. You couldn't progress further until you'd used the sanitizer. And I think that is something that some premises are going to have to look at a lot more and place. And a lot of it, I think, will be peer pressure as well, where people will get the frowns of disapproval if they don't behave themselves. And that's probably the cafes and restaurants, etc. It's troubling times that we're going through, and I just really hope that people will step up to the plate. For too long, I think it's been regarded as just one of those industries that no one really concerns themselves too much with, as long as there's not an outbreak of some food-related sickness or whatever, and then there's a panic measure to clean. Sorry.
Yeah, okay. All right. And I just wanted to reiterate what you said about buying local. One of the things that the Hutt Valley COVID-19 business response team identified right back, weeks and weeks ago when we set ourselves up as a team, which is a combination. We've pulled the resources of the Hutt Valley Chamber of Commerce, the Hutt City Council and the Upper Hutt City Council. So all three of us are working really closely together in terms of resources and advice and information and supporting the business community. One of the very first premises we created for our group was certainly to support the local community first, and to make sure that the local business community got all the support that we could get through government and through government agencies, and that the local business community had a voice, a very loud voice, straight into MB and other agencies around the impact of COVID-19 on Hutt Valley businesses. You made a really good point about choosing local businesses, and over the coming weeks certainly we'll be doing a lot more work around encouraging local businesses to use other local businesses. It's a really important part of the recovery out of COVID-19, and hence why we're doing these live streams with local businesses rather than bringing in experts from outside outside the area. When we've got people like you, Ross, who know cleaning inside out and have done it for many, many years and know the premises and know the people and know the industry. So can I just thank you for your expertise? I mean, I've always known that that you know a lot about cleaning and take it very seriously. And of course, I'm sure even thinking about some of the things you must have seen around fecal transmission of COVID or something like that is pretty scary for most of us. We don't think about it. So thank you for sharing your expertise. Thank you for being a member of the Hutt Valley Chamber of Commerce for so many years. I'll have to look up when you first joined on our database. Can I encourage anyone who has any questions for Ross about cleaning or preparing their business for level 3 or operating during level 3 and level 2, then please do look Fabricare-floorcare.co.nz up on the web. And I'm not sure, I think the phone number, Ross, do you want to give us your phone number?
Yeah, freebie, 56 50 390.
Great, that's lovely. So you don't hesitate to contact Ross if you want some advice or some support around ensuring that your premises are clean. I think it's important to give your customers the confidence that you have done all that you can around providing a clean and safe environment so that we can encourage them to come back and to buy from you. Just in closing, I'd just like to say there's several more live streams organised for the next several days really, around preparing businesses for level 3 and to operate during level 3. We're looking at some live stream around packaging, certainly around some of the changes in tax law, working from home and health and well-being. So those topics are coming up, as well as some specialist live streams around the manufacturing sector, which is very, very important to us going forward and thinking about the recovery out of COVID-19. We've got some fabulous manufacturers and they're all pivoting and creating new services and new products, which I'm sure we're all going to need. So thank you again, Ross, for joining us this morning. Thank you for sharing your expertise and have a great day.
Okay, thanks very much, Helen.
Cheers.
Bye.